Today, making your character count big time. So I've been thinking about this for a while because I think what many of us focus on are the skills we need to lead or manage. We've talked about both. And I think we miss the point that behind those things we're doing is a person. And that person has a character. There are certain traits, there are certain personalities, there are certain things that make you unique from somebody else. And as a leader, we need to focus on those a whole lot more. So let me tell you what the dictionary says character is. The particular combination of qualities that you have that makes you distinct from anybody else. What makes you stand out from anyone else? That's your character. And again, I think we sort of think there is one right way to do leadership. There are certain things that we all need to have, and this is the proper way to be a leader. And there's some truth to that. There are better ways, better things that get a better effect, that make you more influential perhaps, are better at motivating people, get more stuff done. Absolutely true. But there are also unique things about each of us that make people want to follow us. And not everybody likes the same type of person, and not everybody's going to follow the same type of person. So it's important to look at your unique makeup of your character. And what often happens is we let our character sort of be an undertone and we don't focus on it. And I want to bring that up into the light today and think about, who are you? What type of person are you? What's the impact you're having on the people around you? Why would anybody want to follow you? Why not go work for a different leader at a different organization? Why you? It's been said that people work for the person just directly above them. They don't necessarily work for the company. They work for you. Why? Why do they like you? Why do they want to follow you? Or why don't they like you? Or why don't they want to follow you? So when you think about character, I'm going to say some lines that we often use to help you start to think about your character and the character of others. We were talking about this the other day. My youngest grandbaby is just over 2 months old, and we're starting to see her character develop, right? So think about that. Her unique style is very much different than her sister's. What is it about that that's different? Sometimes we'll talk about somebody as a good character or a reliable person or an unreliable person, an honest person or a dishonest person. We'll say things like, well, he's a strange character. What does that mean, right? What does it mean when you hear somebody say he's a strange character, right? It might be that they are, what's the word? Can't come up with it, but that they're unique, they're different, they stand out. How do they stand out? We might say he's quite the character or she's quite the character. Again, what does that mean? Sometimes we will say that person is of sound character, and often what we're talking about is maybe they have good morals or good ethics. We will say something like, she damaged her reputation or her character when she did that. You know, they acted a certain way, said a certain thing, dressed a certain way, and that damages their character. Or we will say that they're out of character. What does that mean? What is their normal character, and what are they doing now that's different from how they normally act or how they normally show up? Yeah, so that's those ones. So all of those things start to get you to think about character, right? What is it? How would you describe my character? We've often sort of overlooked who we are, how we impact people. And so I've done a lot of work as I've been building my business and looking at how I coach other people and how I've been coached. And, you know, it's always intrigues me how people define me or talk about me. One of the things that came up very early when I first started my business was that people would use words like nice and comfortable, that I'm likable. And I was like, really? That's the best you can come up with? That's how you describe me? And it took a long time to sort of get more comfortable with those words. And in truth is, there's probably a way that I'm easygoing, I'm welcoming, I'm kind. And the more I look at those traits, I'm like, yeah, Yeah, and that's exactly who I want to be, right? I don't want to be somebody who's pushy. I don't want to be arrogant. I don't want to be demanding. I don't want to be rude, right? I do want to be a compassionate, kind person. Now, I also want to have traits around things like integrity. I also want to be seen as somebody who is sort of strategically focused. I look at some of the groups or people that I belong, like organizations that I belong in, and I want to make sure that, hi, Christina, great to see you. Let me know what some of the traits or characteristics are that I'm talking that you like in a good leader, right? So as we're thinking about, the things that we want to become, we have to look at who we want to be. So as I was saying, I want to be seen as strategic. When I'm in an organization, I want to be able to step back and take that wider, longer view. I want to help the people around me to sort of lift their heads up and see that wider and broader view. I want to impact people to sort of think about vision. I want people to think about goals. I want people to think more intentionally as we're looking at where we are now and where do we want to go. And I do that in my family. I do that in the groups I belong in, and I do it in my own life. And that's a trait or a character trait or personality trait about me that I cultivate, that I want to grow. So if you do a quick Google search for what are the effective characteristics of a leader, you'll come up with a zillion. There's no sort of right top 3, top 5, top 10. There are a zillion. Now, many of them are similar in the top sort of 20 or 30. So I'm going to read some, and I want you to think about this. I want you to think about a leader that you maybe like, that you respect, that you follow, and think about somebody that you don't like, respect, or follow, somebody that, frustrates you. And think about some of these traits and think, do they have them? Don't they have them? So clear and focused, right? They can articulate what they're talking about in that moment. They know what's going on, and they can focus on that. Along with that focused is that they can stay focused despite distractions. That's something that's an effective trait. Effective leaders are often seen as visionary. They're able to go out there, and despite the chaos that's happening right now, they can go out there and they can see what it is that they want to develop in their organization, where they're taking their organization. They can then also come back and communicate that vision. So is that something the leader you respect can do? Effective leaders are often inspiring and motivating. So they can take their team and build something in them to get the people that are following them to do the work. The most effective leaders aren't doing the frontline work. They're not getting in there and getting their hands dirty all the time. They will at times, but their whole point is not to do the frontline work. Their whole point is to motivate and inspire the frontline people to do the frontline work, and that they have the bigger vision, and they're, doing the work necessary to get their team to that bigger vision. Effective leaders are often persistent. They are gritty. They're determined. They don't give up. Again, it is not an easy place to be a leader. Whenever we're leading a team, an organization, our family, ourselves, we are going to hit humps and bumps constantly. We are going to be challenged. We are going to run into problems. As a leader, can you, or is the person that you're following, can they follow along and stay with things despite those humps and bumps? And can they, sort of pick themselves back up, pick the team back up, dust themselves off, and keep moving forward when something happens? Effective leaders challenge assumptions. It's not necessarily this is the way it's always been done. Are there other ways to do it? An effective leader doesn't avoid conflict, which means they're good at handling relationships. They've got that trait where they're not afraid to walk into a difficult conversation and address an issue. They have integrity. That's probably, if you do this quick Google search, that's probably the one thing that you will see again and again and again pop up to the top of the list: integrity. Effective leaders walk their talk. They have a set of values and they live those values. It's not enough that they write them down on a piece of paper or state them. They actually live their values. And that's what this whole thing about character is. An effective leader is confident, decisive. They're a good mentor, right? Those are all things that as an effective leader, you want to think about developing in yourself. But here's the thing, where many of us spend more of our time, let me back up. Many of us don't spend time thinking about this, for starters. We don't consider what are the traits that I need to have to be an effective leader. We don't sit down and journal that, write that down. 2 seconds, I got to grab a drink of water. We don't stop to think about who am I and how am I showing up on my team? What's the impact I'm having? We actually spend more time planning a vacation than planning who we are and how we show up. And that's what often gets us into trouble. And so we have to step back and start to think about, what are the things that I want to cultivate in myself? What's the type of person I want to be? And that's that intention. That's that I need to focus more on being a patient person. I need to focus more on being kind and compassionate. I need to focus more on being present. I need to focus more on having that strategic focus. I need to figure out what my values are so that I can be more in integrity with my values. But that's the first step. The second step then is to think about, am I living those? So it's one thing to say that it's important for me to be patient. But then when you lose it tomorrow or yesterday, or you say, I'm going to be a compassionate person, yet the first thing that slips out of your mouth is some sarcasm or a judgment about the person who cut you off in traffic, without stopping to go, wow, maybe they're having a bad day, or maybe they're going to the hospital because something's wrong, right? That's that living it. And so we often miss the living it piece. And when you think about the living it piece is how you role model it for the people around you. It's not enough to sit down and say, these are the traits of an effective leader, and this is who I want to be. You then have to live it. You have to practice it. You have to get better at it. You have to hone it. You have to figure out, if I want to be more decisive, what do I have to do to develop that in myself? Part of that's a level of confidence, right? If you're going to be decisive in making decisions, and right now you're wishy-washy, you got to start to develop that level of confidence. If you want to develop a character trait where you are very much seen as a mentor, you have to start thinking about, how do I develop relationships with people, and what's the wisdom or the information that I want to impart on them? How would I do that, right? So what I want you to think about is 3 steps to developing your character. So the 3 steps are, first, take some time to identify the character traits that you want to be known for, that you want to strengthen in yourself, that you want to develop. So sit down and journal. What do I want to, one of the best questions to think about is the sort of legacy question. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, I'm leaving this position, leaving this organization. They're having a little going away party for me. What do I want people to say about me? What's the impact that I want people to say I had on them? What is the sort of way that people want to describe me, right? If somebody said, this person was always like this, what is like this? If somebody said, this person always had this impact on their team, what's the impact? That's what I want you to journal. And then I want you to make a list of 2 or 3 traits, no more than that, start with that you want to cultivate in yourself. So that's the first step. Sit down, make a list of the traits you want to cultivate in yourself. The second step then is to go, how do I do that? I mean, it's great to have a list, but you also have to live that list. So think about, what actions would I be taking if people described me as that type of person? What would I be doing? How would I be showing up? What would I have to be taking care of if I was that type of person? So again, come back to maybe one of the traits that you want to develop in yourself is that self-awareness, that ability to have more composure of your emotions and what's going on, emotional intelligence, right? And so if I'm going to be known to be a composed leader, in control of my emotions, more emotionally intelligent, what do I need to do? Well, I need to be aware when my buttons are pushed, and I need to not react to things. I need to choose how I'm going to respond to things. Okay, great. How do I learn that? Where am I going to get those skills? How am I going to be that self-aware that I know what button is being pushed in the middle of a staff meeting? And instead of, ducking and running and saying, okay, the meeting's done because that button just got pushed and I want to shut down, staying, despite the fact that it's a difficult conversation. There might be a little bit of a conflict. I'm going to stay. How do I develop that? Right? And that's one of the things that I want you to start thinking about. What actions would I be taking and how do I learn that? So first step is to identify the traits you want to have as an effective leader. Second step then is to write those traits down. And then the third step is to start to document your progress. Where am I now? Where do I want to be? Maybe on a scale of 1 to 10, you could say if the leadership trait that you're trying to cultivate is, I'm going to go back to my ones, maybe optimistic. Maybe you want to be more optimistic. Maybe you're known as the negative Nelly in the group and you want to start becoming more optimistic. So where am I now? Well, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm at about a 4, maybe. Where do I want to be? Well, I'd like to move up to a 7 in the next 3 months. Okay, how do I do that? What does it look like? Okay, so maybe I need to start a gratitude journal, right? Maybe I need to start looking for more positive things. And maybe I need to start staff meetings. Maybe that's the action that I would have, is that I start staff meetings by acknowledging some of the positive things that our team's been working on. People can then see that. I can sort of measure that, and then you start to document it, right? I'm writing down, had a staff meeting this week, talked about Cindy's, interaction with a client over here, really acknowledged that that was helpful for our organization. Started to see some of the positives. Write them down, make a list of the actions, and then start to document your progress. That's the way you start to really hone in on who you are, how you show up, the impact you have, your character. And people can start to see that character and admire that character and decide they want to follow that character. Think of the word role modeling. What are you role modeling for your team? You're bringing up the younger generation of leaders. You are training them by your actions. It's almost like osmosis, right? What you do is what they're learning. And so make sure that what you do, how you show up, the impact you have is the impact that you want to have. Make sure that you've decided it, planned it, cultivated it, grown it, developed it, not just left it to chance. Because when you just leave it to chance, what's probably going to happen is you're going to lack decisiveness, you're going to lack self-awareness, you're not going to be very visionary, you're going to be focused head down on the current fire crisis that's there, and you're going to be very reactive to whatever shows up. If you want to step back, have a more strategic focus, be more decisive, be more in integrity, show up with more compassion and optimism, you have to plan that, you have to practice it, and you have to chart your progress. So that's what I want you to do. Today's guide sheet, I gotta move all my notes here, make sure they don't fall over. Today's guide sheet is one that I did, I want to say last summer, last fall. So one thing that I do with people is what's called the Leadership Circle profile. If you got my newsletter today, you've seen a little bit about the Leadership Circle profile. The Leadership Circle is a 360 profile that gets feedback from your peers, from your people that you supervise, and the people that supervise you, maybe some of the community, things like that. And it pulls it into a chart that helps you look at both your reactive sort of tendencies, the things that you do that aren't so helpful, people pleasing, conforming, maybe control issues, that kind of stuff, as well as the things that are the traits and the characteristics that help you to effective leadership. Things like visionary, self-aware, integrity, strategic focus, decisiveness, all of those things. So last fall, I took all of those during these weekly sessions, and I did a whole series of them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks in a row. And I looked at achieving results. So if you're going to be an effective leader, you have to achieve results. Systems awareness, that bigger, longer, broader view. So rather than head down, only focused on the fire, as an effective leader also needs to be very visionary, strategic focused, taking people to that. And then we looked at relating to others. One of the most effective things that we do as leaders is we interact with the people we supervise. We interact with our colleagues. We interact with the community. How are you doing with that? How are your relationships? Are you good at communicating? Are you an effective communicator? Do you avoid conflict? Are you able to have some of those touchy conversations and move things forward? Then we looked at authenticity, that Are you able to live in integrity? Again, it's not enough to say that I think work-life balance is important if you don't live work-life balance and role model it for your staff. If you're saying to your staff, make sure you take time off, make sure you're healthy, and then you're there till 6 and 7 o'clock at night and you haven't used all your vacation, you are not in integrity. You're not aligned. And if you say things like, it's really, really important for us to be on time, get your deadlines met, and you're the one who's not meeting deadlines, that's not living in integrity. So that's the other one we talked about. And then finally, we talked about increasing your self-awareness. So this guide sheet 20, it's in the side here on the notes. It gives you a link to all 5 of those Facebook Lives. So there's like mini training, 20-minute-ish videos, a guide sheet that goes with each of them to help you get clear on what are the results you're aiming for. Do you have a systems focus? Are you relating well to others? Are you living authentically? And then increasing your self-awareness. Goodness sakes, I don't know why I'm so thirsty today. My throat's. And then there's a blog that goes with each of those. So it's like a mini training. You get all 5 of those in a row. So that's the guide sheet, reviewing the skills to be an authentic leader. And so I think when you stop and take that break back and you start to look at who do I want to be? How do I want to show up? What's the impact I want to have? And then intentionally create that in yourself. That's when you start to really become that leader that feels better about herself, as well as has the impact you want to have. So I just wanted to say the Leadership Circle, again, is the 360 that I do. If you're interested in that, there's a 10% discount this month. So just message me and we can talk more if that's something you want to do. What I know for many women leaders is they've never had a performance appraisal, or they've never had an effective performance appraisal. If you have questions while I'm talking, pop the questions into the chat box, whether you're watching now on the live or following up on the replay. But many people have either had a performance appraisal that's been, this is good, this is good, this is good, kind of the sandwich technique, make sure you fix this is good, this is good, right? And we focus on that one thing that's wrong. Or you've had the performance appraisals that are tick boxes for, we need to make sure that this gets done because of, policies, or you're going through accreditation or standards review, and so we just have to get it off. Or you've had the performance appraisal that's been a witch hunt, where there's been something specifically wrong with you, according to the people in your organization, and they are going to make sure that it gets pulled out from the staff, from whoever's supervising you, and you are going to be kind of dragged through the mud. That's what I've seen for a lot of people with their performance appraisals. They never had a valuable performance appraisal that stepped back and really truly looked at how they show up and the impact they have. The very first time I did my Leadership Circle profile was maybe 7 years ago now. One of the things that came out was I was not in integrity, and that blew me out of the water. I was devastated to hear that my staff didn't see me in integrity, but I didn't understand at the time what integrity meant. And I didn't understand how I could say to my staff, you are so important and I believe in you and you guys deserve all of this stuff. And then I would go to management meeting and I would hit a roadblock with some of the things that I was looking for, maybe around sick leave or the supports that they needed. And then I would come back and I would say, it's the way it is. I can't change it. And so I wasn't aligned. I'm your cheerleader, but I'm coming back saying I can't make any changes for you. Or I would say things like the stuff around self-care. Self-care is so important. Self-care is vital. Make sure you take care of yourself. And then I was falling apart. And so they didn't see me in alignment, right? Or I would say our team is so important and we need to build our team and we need to focus on team building stuff. And yet I would take one person and I would favor them, right? So they didn't see me aligned. They didn't see me in integrity. And so I really had to step back and start to look at what does that mean? And often what that lack of integrity was a level almost of arrogance, where I put myself above them or better than them. And I knew more. I'd been in the organization for almost 20 years. So I had this wealth of knowledge, wealth of history, wealth of experience, and it showed up, right? Here I am. I'm the almighty leader. And I had to step back and learn some humility. I had to learn to develop my team in a different way. And it was the Leadership Circle profile that really helped me to sort of see that. When you do your Leadership Circle profile, it's attached to coaching, which for me was invaluable at the time. It wasn't my boss trying to tell me how to do things. It wasn't my staff trying to give me feedback. It was somebody outside of the organization helping me really look at the information that the team and my staff and my supervisor and people in the community had said about me anonymously. It wasn't like it was all, Cindy said this and Jackie said this and all that kind of stuff. But it was, anonymous. I couldn't tell, but it was very clear what the feedback was. And it gave me the opportunity with my coach to go, how do I develop a level of integrity? Where do I gain that systems of focus? What's humility mean? And how do I show up with humility more? And so that helped me start to really develop my character. And that's what I think, as I say, leaders need to do, is we need to develop our character more and start to really look at who we are, how we show up, not just what we say on paper, not just the list we have, but how we live it, how we role model it to other people. And so that's what today's session is all about. I really want you to do those three things. Sit down and journal. What are the character traits that I want to have and grow and develop in me? How do I want people to talk about me 5 years or 10 years from now when I leave this organization? What's the impact I want to have? Write those things down. Then start to think about what are the actions that I can take that will grow those. If I want to live in integrity, if I want to have more compassion, if I want to be more decisive, if I want to be more optimistic, what actions demonstrate that to the people around me? How do I have to show up? What do I have to be doing for people to say that? Because if you say I'm a person of integrity, that doesn't mean a whole hill of beans. Doesn't mean nothing. It's what other people say about your integrity that counts, and that's your actions. So you have to show up as that kind of person. So make your list of actions, and then start to really look at documenting that. What did I do this week to show up as that type of person? What are the actions I had? What are people saying about that? What's the impact I'm having? You have to document that. If you're not documenting it, you're not going to know, right? It's like when we try and lose weight. If you're not stepping on the scale every now and then, how will you know if you lost weight? Maybe you're measuring it by how tight your jeans are, but you have to have some type of measurement. So make sure you do that. Go get the guide sheet. The guide sheet is the whole summary training of all the effective leadership traits that I talked about last fall that come out of the Leadership Circle profile. If you are interested in getting your Leadership Circle profile done, just message me and we can set up a call to talk more about that. But really go and get this guide sheet. Really start to look at the activities that are going to help you look at the 5 sort of traits that have been identified. Like I say, there's a zillion traits out there. They're not the only effective traits of leaders, but they are some really key ones that we need to look at. And how can you develop those in yourself? Because when you start to really look at your character, when you start to really identify who you are, how you want to show up, the impact you want to have, be more intentional about that. Really make sure that you're creating and cultivating and growing that in yourself. That's, my dear, when you move from surviving to thriving in both your leadership and life. Go make the rest of your day awesome, and I'll talk to you next week.